Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Call. Today, I am delighted to have Poppylillac. Is it Poppylillac or?
Oh, poppies.
Yeah, Poppy's fine. Excellent. Poppy is 18 years old and comes from a family of her father was a police officer. Um, yeah, she's got a really good story to tell, and I'm really looking forward to sharing everything with you guys. Um, so, Poppy, let's start from the start. Tell us about your childhood?
So I grew up a little bit north of Townsville, from a little town called Balgow Beach. So Dad worked at the station, two-man station. So I grew up in the police house out there, right across the driveway from the police station. Stayed there until I was about 15 before Dad retired. He was in the police force for 37, I want to say 37, 35, 37 years before he retired in 2020. Lucky man, missed out on having to shave his beard from us. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, I grew up right across the road from the police station. Small little community. I think it was about 150 people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you were born while he was living out there, and that's like you stayed
yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
entire childhood
Oh
till
yeah.
you're 15. Where did you go to
Yeah.
school?
So we had this little primary school. We had this bush track behind from the police station that led down to the school. It's about 50 yards from the school. Um, it had 100 kids at its max.
Yep.
So tiny, tiny little school for primary school. And then I went into town to Calvary Christian College in the city for my high school years, and I graduated last year.
Yep. Yep. Okay, cool. So do you have any siblings?
I do. So they they're about 15 to 16 years older than me.
Okay.
So they were born down in Brisbane before Dad met Mum, and so yeah, that Dad's don't scratch me. Sorry, my cat's next to me. He's attacking me. Um, yeah, so they were born down in Brisbane. I think Dad's ex-wife was also a police officer,
Okay.
so they with both parents in the job.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a huge divorce rate when there's multiple
Oh
people
yeah.
in those first responder roles, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So you would have grown up being taken to school in the police car and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we used to get like different police cars that they'd swap it out. Got to sit in like the little cage in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it?
Um,
It becomes your normal. We worked in
oh yeah.
small single officer towns as well, and taking the kids to school in an ambulance
Yeah.
was a non-event. It was
Yeah,
just a normal thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's just how we went out. Yeah.
Do
Like it.
you so um when did you first notice how old do you think you were when you noticed that things weren't, I guess, normal compared to other people, like whether dad was getting crook or whether you realized that your upbringing was not a normal upbringing?
Well, living in a small town, I only had a handful of friends because I don't know who else are you going to be friends with. But the four other people in your grade. But when I went into high school, um, I think I would have been 14, maybe 15. And we were sitting in class and we were talking about safe driving. We must have been 15 or 16 because it was about us getting our licenses and how we're going to be safe on the roads when we eventually get to that. And it was an ad about a teenager getting into a crash, and then the copper turns up at the crash. You know, the teenager's passed, and then they go to the parents' house, and the copper has to deliver the news. And so the story is about like this is your parents if you drive recklessly. But the only thing I could think about was that's definitely been my dad at many points in his career of having to go to houses and tell families that their child is dead or their brother's dead or their mother's dead or XYZ. And that was the only thing I could think about. And I burst into tears. Like I was inconsolable. I had to leave the classroom. And I was like, no one else cried. No one else really like they were like, oh yeah, I should drive safer, but no one else really like conceptualized it the way I did. And I sat down with one of my teachers and she was like, do you think that the way you were raised or the environment in which you were raised in has brought this upon you? And yeah, that's kind of the mindset that I had.
Yeah.
That was like the switch in my brain that I was like, oh yeah, there was a lot of things that happened that no one else in my life.
Did Dad share stories with you about that type of thing, or did he
Um,
shelter you, or
no, it was never really sheltering. I mean, I don't think we used to have people who, because they knew, so it was house, house, and then driveway in the middle, and then the police station across the driveway. So people knew which house we lived in because Dad was the sergeant. And so they'd come all the way down to the end of the driveway. If no one was in the station, they'd come up to the door and they'd knock on the door when they had issues. Like we had issues happen in our front yard all the time. Um,
yeah, there's no such thing as privacy when you live on station.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I knew all the people, whether or not I had like known them. But I knew all the people that Dad went to jobs
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
So like, I knew the names, I knew what was happening. Definitely when I was much younger, like I want to say like below the age of 12, definitely there was not a whole lot of conversations about what happened or how it happened or why Dad was upset.
yeah,
But I always knew that if Dad was upset, then something bad had happened. Or um, I remember he did a 12-week stint with no days off. And I think he had 3 deaths, maybe more, in that 12 weeks. And I was at the age where I could conceptualize that. But I can remember Mum being like, "Hey, like this is a really tough time for Dad. Like he's not doing great. Like he's just had this job that's happened. He's had this 4-week missing man situation, you know." So I knew, but I don't think I like knew in my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Yeah,
So was
like
Mum the
in that.
buffer, or did Dad discuss it, or was Mum mainly the buffer?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Dad discussed it with me.
Yeah,
Like he's always been a considering the 37 years he did in the job.
yeah,
Um, I can so confidently say that I think he is the most sweetheart teddy bear old man you've ever met in your
yeah,
life. Like he just always has such a kind soul. And he never used to shy away from like being like, hey, I'm not feeling great like at the moment, or this has just happened. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
How do
it
you
was
think him being a police officer affected him as a dad, as in with his outlook on life and parenting
oh,
style and that type of thing?
yeah, he's always been. I can remember when I was a kid and mum and dad used to write their phone numbers on my forearm so that like when I went out with friends, if they weren't there or if like I got lost, I could always like find someone and be like, this is my parents' phone number. Can you call them?
Yeah,
Like I can recite their phone number to this day.
yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah. And I've been in such like I've I went to like I've been to places and like in all fairness, I probably like it was not called for, but I've like told people I've been like, my mother's phone number is 04 and like been
it
like,
was
can
your
you call
fallback.
her?
It was your fallback
Yeah,
safety thing.
like it's like, can you call my mom? But yeah, definitely it changes the way like I remember when I got my license and like not trusting anyone else on the highway
Yeah,
because we live so far out. So I'd be driving on the highway every day. Um, so not trusting other people on the highway and just having that like real life knowledge of this could happen.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you went there and you did this, this could be the outcome.
yeah. Did you
And
ever? Did you ever witness any like him policing? Did you ever witness
Oh, oh yeah, for
anything
sure. I
negative?
mean, I mean, I remember one time we were in, this is probably a little bit of a baby example, but I remember we were in the police car and that we had cattle on the highway all the time. And he saw the cattle and he was just like, okay, look, I'm going to try to get this off the road, like off the highway so no one crashes into it. Just stay in the car. And he gave me a torch and he goes, just shine this at the cow. And if it moves while I'm trying to like get the people to stop driving on the highway, yell out for me. And I was like in the car, like, don't move, please don't move, like shaking like a leaf. But definitely like if anything happened while we were out, like if we went to like the local pub or like if anything happened, dad, even after retirement, he's always that person to step in and be like, hey, let's like calm down the situation. So like
Yeah.
I've definitely seen him in action. He has this thing when he's giving like a serious conversation. Like when he's telling someone straight, if he's giving advice, if someone's messed up, we call the Uncle Goffy chat, where like he'll sit someone down and be like, right, get it together. And his voice drops an octave. It's a real thing. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Puts on his
So
dad voice or his sergeant voice.
because for all the kids in the community, he's always Uncle Goffy.
Yeah.
He's always Goffy.
Yeah.
It's never like Sergeant Brad. He was just like
It
kids
was one of
would
the
jump up.
community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is. And like he used to teach us, oh, he used to like referee our touch football games in the police uniform when he like had a like he'd be like on the field in those long pants and those huge boots and all of his gear on, just for the
Community
step in.
policing hits different, doesn't it? It's very
Oh, it
different.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he definitely created a community in such a low socioeconomic community that I think Rolling Stone was, or Balgo Beach was, for a lot of families. I think he bridged that gap that happens a lot where children or families that live in those situations don't trust the police.
Yeah.
And he kind of created that kind of relationship with them where they can reach out, even if they know they messed up, even if
Yeah.
they know like, oh, I could get in trouble for this, or
You're likely
I
to get
messed
in
up.
more trouble if you don't own it.
Yeah. But like you can always go to, Uncle Goffy for a chat
Yeah.
and be like, hey, I did this. How can I fix it? Type of
Did you ever
situation.
did you ever cop anything negative yourself from being the daughter of a police officer in a small town?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I had any friends till grade 4. Yeah, it was always like, oh, you're the police officer's kid. Yeah, you're the police officer's kid. And then in high school, around 2020, when that police officer shot George Floyd in America.
Yep.
And then it was ACAB and F the police this and F the police that. And I was like in this middle ground of like, yeah, that police officer really messed up, but my dad's a police officer.
Yeah.
And how do I separate those two actions as not all police officers are like that?
Yep.
But what that police officer did still was wrong, and how to have to cop that when everyone's like, yeah, ACAB, blah, blah. And I have to like rationalize in my mind that they're not specifically talking about dad.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. I know I'm fairly defensive when you see that sort of stuff and you see those
Yeah.
generalizations, etc. But
Oh
I've
yeah.
never thought about it from a child's perspective of somebody in that position, and it must be very confronting.
Oh yeah. And I think I was in grade 8, maybe grade 9. And so like I was like just a little awkward kid. And like in your mind at that age, you're like, well, you're attacking my dad. Like you're
Yeah,
saying that about my dad. And even like still to this day, like coppers get a bad rap. And like I understand it, but it's still being able to disassociate. They're not talking about dad.
yeah,
Like
absolutely, yeah,
that's not directly aimed towards him. It's a generalization of their experiences or what they've heard or what they've seen.
yeah,
It doesn't attacking my family.
Yeah, it is very hard to not take things personally and to separate that.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's a really good point. Um,
yeah.
when you were going, so you were growing up out at Balgale Beach. Were you a happy kid?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I was yeah, I was about as happy as a kid could be. I mean, I had friends like when I had friends. Um, but in my mind, I lived a, a regular life. Like
Yeah,
I had friends. I went up to their house for sleepovers. We had dinners, and we went to the
yeah,
beach.
yeah.
Like yeah, I had a happy childhood.
And when did you notice that Dad started to get have a few problems?
Um, I mean, it's always like little things. I'm not sure if there's a pinpoint moment, but I guess, as you get older, you start to be able to recognize and cognitively understand, like this is this is not right, or
Yeah.
this is the way his brain works, and
Did he
yeah.
know at the time? Did he know as he was, as you were getting older? Did he understand that he had issues?
Oh, of course. I think he's been medicated for a while.
Okay.
Um,
Because a lot of people with PTSD, especially first responders, are in denial and they don't think they've got any problems, and it is the families that notice those
oh
issues
yeah,
first.
yeah, and I'm sure that it was probably my mother who was like, "Hey, you need to hop on something
Yeah,
because, you know." But yeah, and I think even mum said once, like, mum said his inspector called her one day and just said, "Hey, he needs to get out of the job, or like he needs help or something."
yeah,
And mum just said to him, like, "Then get him help.
yeah,
Like, that's you. Like, you're his inspector.
yeah. Oh, good
You
on
need to
her.
get that together,
Yeah,
not us."
it's a team.
Yeah,
It's a
and they
team
never,
effort.
yeah, they never did that though.
Yeah,
They never got him. Yeah, but I think additionally, like the mental struggle of because he was on call a lot.
yeah,
There's no like night shift in small towns, so you do 8 to 4 during the day, and then you're on call all night. So it's this like up and down, this spike in cortisol when the phone rings and you get the job to like getting to the job if it's a high tense situation, like you're in your fight or flight mode. But if you get there and it's nothing really, then it's that spike and then it drops.
yep,
And then 3 hours later, you get another call, it spikes up and then it drops.
yep.
And
And then it
then
takes time to get back to sleep.
yeah, yeah. And then I I wrote something about it on my website about um you do the 8 to 4 and then you do the 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., 12 a.m., 2 a.m., 8 to 4.
Yep,
And that's just how you run. Because if the phone rings, you get up, you go, like you have your uniform ready to go, you throw it on, you go, you get the
yeah,
car, you leave. And then you retire, and then your body's had 37 years of
absolutely. You're
cortisol
trained.
up, cortisol out, cortisol up, cortisol out, and then all of a sudden it's nothing.
Yep.
The
Well,
biggest part of your day is
when we
your
used to
brain.
get dispatched to jobs, we'd get a text message first, and if I was asleep, if my personal text message went off, I wouldn't hear it. But if my work one went off, I was awake and
Yeah.
up before they'd ring to
Oh
actually
yeah.
dispatch the job. And then even if I hear it now at a shopping centre, it's just an instant adrenaline
Oh, of
dump.
course.
You just
Yeah,
cannot
of
turn that
course.
off.
No, no, you can't. And yeah, it's, and then even like post retirement, like not having that is like going from up and down to nothing at all
Yeah.
is like it messes with your head, like
So do you
because
think
your
do you
brain
think
is
Dad got worse after he retired? Like
I would say yes and no. I mean, yes, because he lives such an easier life now.
yeah,
He's not worried about like what junkie is like causing a scene down the road, or he's not worried about like for a little bit after his retirement, every time the phone rang at dinner, we'd all go, oh, because we
Yeah.
always knew it was going to be cops. But, and then for a little bit while after his retirement, because he took a lot of sick leave, a little bit after his retirement, every time the phone rang, we go, oh, and then we go, oh, it's, it can't be it. Oh, thank God. And it would, yeah. And like that was always like, it was
Yeah.
always good
So you guys were
to like
trained just as much as he was in that
oh, for
response.
sure.
It's just an automatic thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like dad, when I was younger, if I was at home by myself and mom was at work and dad was at work, and then dad would call the home phone and he'd say, get your bag, meet me downstairs. Like meant he had a job. I always had a go bag packed
Yeah.
because mom used to work late.
So
I
you
don't know
just
how
had
long it was.
like a friend to
Yeah,
automatic drop
yeah.
off
I had a
area.
go bag packed. All of my friends' parents were like just new.
Yeah.
Like if you can hear license sirens or if the police car pulls up or if I'm just at your door being like, hi, then Goffy's got a job and you're just gonna have to look after me for a couple hours.
Yep.
But you know, you had it down pat. Like I'd grab my go bag, I'd be downstairs, I'd be out the door, I'd be at the car by the time that dad had got all of like his belt and stuff on and we'd be at the car. Like that
Yep.
it's like such a just an ingrained reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
it. You've grown up like that, haven't you? So
Oh yeah.
it's no different. It's not like that's happened when
Yeah.
you're 15, where you've automatically got to work it out. This is just something you've been
Yeah.
brought up with.
Yeah. It's not like dad joined the cops when I was 10 and
Yeah,
I lived 0 to 10 not experiencing that. Like that it's just always been the normal.
yeah. So
Like, yeah.
we're gonna get into more of this down the track. But were you ever offered anything as far as
Oh God, no.
any support? No.
God,
What
no.
about your mother?
No, not at
No.
all. I think, yeah, no. Dad barely got any support. Let alone mum and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say it forever, but QPS does a horrible job at making sure first responders and their families have the support they need because I don't think once in my life or my mother's life has anyone reached out and been like, hey, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's one thing that is sadly lacking in all first response. There's stuff available, but it's
it's
up to you to
self-refer.
reach out, and it can
Mhm.
be it can be really tough.
Six free psychology sessions, telehealth psychology sessions a year.
Yeah,
Three more if you need it. If you need it, you shouldn't be doing the job. Yeah, I remember they called dad after a particularly tough job, and they were like, "Oh, you can opt in for your one free psychology session over the phone." And dad was like, "No, I don't know who it's going to be. I've never spoken to them before. I get
yeah,
an hour to unpack everything,
yeah,
and
and
then
that's it.
I just
For those that haven't gone to a psychologist, it can take you.
oh
You
yeah,
might go through five before you find the one that you click with. And a good
yeah,
psychologist is gold. Don't get me wrong; they have a role,
oh
and
yeah,
I go to one very regularly. Um,
yeah.
but
Psychology is
if
great.
Absolutely. But if you don't click with that person, there's going to be
No,
no therapeutic relationship there. So
no,
just to have a one off it's basically a redundant practice.
yeah, yeah. And it's just hopping on a phone call with a stranger
Yeah.
and just being like,
Essentially,
fix.
it's ticking a box.
Yeah, it is. And that's all they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, even for that job, dad was at the station by himself. I don't think there was anyone working, or someone was on leave, or someone's away, or whatever, for that job. And it went to Darragate as well, just like it was just on comms. And one of his mates heard the call, and they were like, "Oh, is someone gone out with him?" Like just like knew instinctively this is going to be a horrible job. Has is someone going out to just be with him, help out, anything? I'm like, no, 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 he's fine. He'll be fine. No, he'll be fine. And his mate was like, you guys suck. And he hopped in a squad car and he went out and just, yeah, yeah. And just like to be with dad, just to have someone
Yeah.
that's like, you did what you
Got your
could.
back. You just need somebody to have
Yeah,
your back. That's the
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, just
Um,
there.
did you grow up wanting to be a police officer when you were younger?
God no.
No, even
God,
from early on.
yeah. People would ask me um, are you gonna be a police officer like your dad when you grow up? I always say I'd never want to do that.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible. I think as I got older, like around like now of my life, like I've definitely come around to the idea of joining the cops.
Okay.
Um, I don't know.
That surprises me. I thought it would have been the opposite. So that's I find that
Yeah,
intriguing.
no, yeah.
Is it
I
because you
think
think now that you're old enough, you can and you've seen the problems, you can sort of make changes from the inside?
well, I think it's always about what dad used to say to me. Well, not me, but like anyone. He'd like say something like, oh, like like after he retired, he'd be like, I didn't like the coppers, like, I should have left sooner. And they'd be like, well, why would you do it then? Why did you even join? Why did you leave? And dad would always say, well, who's gonna do it? Are
Yep.
you gonna do it? Are you gonna join the coppers? Are you gonna put your hand up to be on the front line?
Yep.
Are you gonna join the fires? Are you gonna join the ambulance? And they'd be like, oh no, 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 it's too much. And then dad's like, so who else?
Yep.
Who's gonna do it then?
Yeah, that's it. Everyone's very quick to criticize. Very few are willing to actually go down that track.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, who's gonna do it? Like the QPS can't keep people for longer than 5 years these days. And they're throwing money into academies and paying coppers more, but it's not keeping them around.
Yep.
And yeah. So who is gonna do it?
Yep.
Like,
It points to more systemic issues than just the job.
for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was younger, I used to and ah between being a paramedic and being a police officer. And
Yeah.
yeah, now that I've been a paramedic, I could never wear the blue.
No.
I have mad respect for just the patience that most of them have to have. Don't
Oh
get me wrong.
yeah.
There's a few bad apples, but there is in every organization on earth.
Oh yeah.
But though the vast majority I've come across have been they're good people wanting to do good things by other people, who deal with a lot of bad people doing bad things,
Oh yeah. And
and the
even
heartbreak.
yeah. And then even like to the smallest jobs of just like disruption in the street. Like
Yeah,
I couldn't like working on the beat, like working down the strip, like to the patience you have to have with just a million of inebriated people.
yeah,
Like, yeah. And even I went down to Sydney recently to Fire and Rescue New South Wales hold a retreat for their fireys down there. And I was talking to one of the blokes who runs it, and he said that one of his guys was a copper turned fiery. When he was a copper, he went to this job. Someone lit this car on fire. He turned up to the job, calmed down the situation before the fireys got there, and the people who lit the car on fire were throwing rocks at him,
yeah,
like pebbles and stones were like literally stoning him
yeah.
as he's like trying to calm down the situation. The fireys got there, put out the car fire, and then the neighbors brought out like cupcakes for the
For the
fireys.
virus, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and it like, and he said like that was the day I quit the cobbers and I signed up for the fireys because it's just like it's that absolute patience that you have to have of
yeah,
and that like tolerance of you know
yeah,
being able to like know that that general perception is not you
yeah.
singular. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's most people are glad to see fireys and paramedics,
Oh yeah.
and they only glad to see police when it suits them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then
Uh,
like, like no one's like happy to see the coppers.
yeah,
Oh, where'd you go?
You lost me.
I don't know where I've put you.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Find you.
um, so okay, yeah, and as you were growing up,
Yeah,
dad retired when you were around 15. So when you were still at
yeah,
Balgal, and then and obviously you were living in the police residence then. So
yeah.
the decision was made as a family to move to Townsville.
Oh no, mum and dad still live out at Belga.
Oh, they still do. Okay.
It's only about an hour's drive from Townsville.
Yeah.
They still live out there. I live in town now, but I know as much as crazy as that community is, it's still home, and it's
Yep.
still the friends you've made and the connections you've made, and yeah.
Yep. So it's still
So
your
yeah,
home. You
still.
still feels like your home.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
mean, yeah, that beach and the creeks, and
Yeah.
yeah, I can remember the tantrum I put on when I was told we had to move out of the
Yeah.
police house. I don't want to leave.
That was your home.
No. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah. And that was like the only home I ever knew. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids we'd moved. By the I think we'd moved to five different places by the time they were. I think my youngest, sorry, my eldest had been to five primary schools by the time
Wow.
she got to high school.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was the nature of that.
Yeah, I remember when I had to go to high school even, and I was like, no, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave it. Like
Yeah.
this is like it's what I know. I don't want to change that.
So did you
And
commute
yeah,
to Calvary, or did
yeah,
you?
4 buses.
Yeah, four buses.
The public bus to the closest public school, which is Northern Beaches. So public bus to there, and then the Calvary bus would come pick us up, take us to Calvary, and on the way home, Calvary bus would take us back to Northern Beaches. And we had to sit around there for like, I don't know, 45 minutes. See some crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah,
Crazy stuff at half an hour in the afternoon.
so that'd be
And then
pretty long
wait
days
for,
then.
oh yeah, I think I left around 6:30 and I didn't get home till 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you developed some of your own health problems.
Yeah, yeah. So I think 2021, I developed anorexia, and then with that, depression and anxiety. I was in hospital, and then my dad discharged me from hospital, because my grandmother was dying, and my grandfather had been put into ICU. Um, yeah, so that was, I think, yeah, it was a big period of my life. And then about 12 months later, 9 months later, my grandfather, who was in ICU for, at that point, 10 months roundabout, he passed, and then my nana passed.
So is this in the middle of COVID?
No, this is just after COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2021 and then into 2022.
Yeah.
And throughout that period, I was like losing weight. They tried to put me in a psych ward. Um, yeah, and yeah, depression, anxiety, and going like through those emotions. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Extremely
which I,
common. Unfortunately, very very common of the modern day teenage female.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did
And
you how did you get help? So you went to hospital. What do you think was the key to getting you better?
um, well, they put me in hospital mostly because they were worried about my heart. Um, but I think it was like my parents had a huge like play in it. Um, like seeing how my mental health and my physical health affected them
Yep.
was a big part for me. Um, I mean, I really loved my therapist, even though she ended up quitting on me and told me I was fine, which I thought was weird. And then my pediatrician went on maternity leave, so I lost a pediatrician. But it was really that community willpower. It was
Yep.
like my friends and family, my family friends rallying around me
Yep.
and helping me. Like
You
it
had your
was that
tribe.
whole, yeah, yeah, it was my tribe and making sure that I like, you know, even if I wasn't at home, like my friends had a pub out west and I was out there and even like going out there and just them being like, hey, it's breakfast time. You're
Yep.
gonna sit down and eat.
Yep.
And like having those people around me that could hold me accountable and
Yeah. So
make
for those
sure
that
that
aren't 100% aware, the people get often confused with anorexia and bulimia. Anorexia is basically not eating and then binge eating, and bulimia is tending to make yourself vomit after eating. So they're two different eating disorders, but they are and they can both happen at the same time as well.
yeah, yeah, no. But I had a lot of good conversations with my therapist and mum and dad. And I think a portion of my mental illness was a result of the life that I had in my childhood and that feeling of, you know, not being enough or needing to live up to this or not having mum and dad there all the time because
Yeah.
mum worked late and dad was out like dad had this crazy job and I think it was a culmination of those things that forced me into this eating disorder.
Yeah.
But it was also them who got me out.
Yep. So my daughter went through some issues with functional neurological disorder when she was around that 19, 18. Oh, actually, I think she first developed late 17, when she was late 17 years old. And seeing somebody go through that you love is incredibly hard. And then to think that you have put her in that position, or
Yeah.
the guilt that you feel
Yeah.
internally. How did mum and dad cope with you going like down that track?
Um, Not well. Like I won't sit here and say that they took it like champs. It's never something that you'll take well, but it was always having that goal. All three of us had that goal, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes I didn't have the goal, but you know, it was always that, you know,
they
let's
were your
just
crutches. They were getting you to that goal no matter what. Yeah,
yeah, it was always that like, you know, 24/7 with me in the hospital
yeah,
and it was like pushing to get me better,
yeah.
you know.
Did it bring you closer?
I think it did.
Yeah,
I think it did. I mean, I wasn't a joy to be around. Um, but I think it formed a bond with us where we could, you know, sit together and be like, yeah, like that was really tough, but we all did it.
yeah.
We all did it together.
And how long were you? How long would you say you were unwell for?
Um, I think like medically unwell, I want to say 12, 18 months.
Yeah,
Um, where I was like underweight. But I don't think like it never goes.
yeah,
Like it's one of those mental things that like I spent 12 months constantly thinking about what I'm eating, when I'm eating it, who I'm eating it, how fast I'm eating it, how slow I'm eating it, how big my bites are, like everything. So like I don't think it's a thing that I'll ever leave,
yeah.
but I think it's a thing I can get better at.
Excellent outlook, because yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's much different to being an alcoholic or
Yeah.
substance abuse or anything, that you're always going to be in that mind. And if you're not conscious of it, it's not hard to slip back into those into that sort of that
Yeah.
remission.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it goes the same for my anxiety. Um, like it's just something you get better at handling. It's
Yeah,
something that, you know, every time you have a thought like that or every time you feel that way, you take a step back and you go, okay, Like, is this my eating disorder in my head telling me that that's
Yep.
not what I eat, or is that me telling myself?
Challenging your perceptions versus
Yeah,
reality. Yeah.
exactly.
That's a
Yeah, but
huge lesson from psychology.
yeah,
And you're unfortunately at the age where you're on that crossover between being a young a pediatric patient and being an adult patient.
yeah.
And
That
that's a
was
really hard crossover, isn't it? Because it's a
for sure.
discontinuation of care.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm yeah. I think my whole care team left, whether they left for maternal reasons or they just changed jobs or
Yeah.
they let me go, for lack of a better term. But yeah, it's definitely different. Even if I just go to the doctors, like I'm not considered a child anymore, so I can't pull that card of like I'm just a kid. They go, please take your card. You need to pay. Um, but yeah, it's definitely different
Yeah.
in way everything's handled.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
yeah,
I wish you continued improvement and luck in that journey. As you said, it is one that will be with you forever. And make sure you keep your treatment up and keep seeing people.
yeah,
So, and it's funny we're talking about you being a kid and you using that as an excuse. And geez, my kid's 21 and she still tries to tell me she's a kid. So
just
when you were in grade 12, you decided to start an organization. Tell us
I
about that.
did. So in grade 12, I think we talked about it in grade 11. After my little crying episode after the ad
When you
in
say we,
class.
who's we?
Me and she was my house coordinator,
Yep.
Miss Rebecca Walsh. She is such a beautiful human. But we sat down and we talked about it, and her her father was an ambo, her husband was a cop, um, and she had two children. And we were talking about it. And we were talking about um, how defense children, and because we had a defense kids program, as I'm sure every school does. Um, and we were talking about how different defense kids are to like how much support they get in comparison to our first responder children who don't get any support, and how we could fix or how we can alter that and how we can get our first responder children support, because in reality it's a much of a muchness. It's like it's just two different sides of the same coin,
Absolutely.
being a defense child and a first responder child. So her mother was the defense support person, and she also had a counselor's degree. So we agreed that we could take on, or that she could take on an opt-in checkup system where she could check in on our first responder children. If they were struggling, they could opt in. We spoke to parents, talked to parents about how they felt about it.
How many kids were in the school and how many kids of those do you think were children of first responders?
I think it was was it 400 to 600 kids school,
Okay.
and we in the high school. I'm not sure about the primary school, but 400 to 600. Um, and we had about 50, I want to
Wow,
say.
that many.
Yeah,
But that's 10%, which is, that's a lot of kids. And like you said, there's a lot out there. Geckos and is probably the most famous one for veteran kids
yeah.
or defense kids. But yeah, there is nothing for first responders. So were you surprised that there were that many?
Um, yeah, honestly, and even like kids I knew. I remember one of the kids in my class, his dad was like a DDO, and I was like, oh, I just never knew that about you. Like I just,
DDO, for those that don't know, is a district duty officer in the police.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so it was, yeah, and we had, oh, remember, forget his name. Your, why am I blanking on his name? Tinko Blue.
Yep, Shane.
Shane, that's his name.
Yep,
Shane's kid goes to Calvary. So, and he is the most insightful kid I know.
yep.
He yeah, he can just, he puts it so beautifully the way that we all feel. And I think he was at grade like 9 when we all sat down together as a group, and we had a chat. He said something like, sometimes the PTSD feels like it's like right here, but sometimes it feels like it's back here.
Yeah,
And he like used his hands and he like to like sometimes it's right in your face, sometimes it's so prevalent
yeah,
in your life, but sometimes it's just something that happens in the background.
yeah.
Sometimes you don't, you wouldn't even know. Um, yeah, he's so beautifully spoken. And then we had um
How was that? That must have been a really comforting feeling to know that you're not alone with some of the feelings that we're going through.
for sure. And being the one who started it, like being the one who had to stand up in front of the school and be like, this is the idea I have, is such like a nerve-wracking feeling, especially for children aged 12 to 18. Um, like it's just horrifying to be like, don't egg my house. And even when we sat down for our first meeting together, and I had to sit up the front and like talk, it was this like everyone's gonna hate this, no one's gonna turn up, like no one's gonna want to talk, it's gonna suck. But there was so much positive feedback. Like even like the kids that I was like, no, you're just here because we had pizza. Like even those kids, like they put their hand up. They were like, this is really tough for me, or and it's such an awesome feeling to like know that so many of these kids are probably in the same grade or one degree of
Yeah.
separation in their lives.
It gives me
But now,
goosebumps hearing you say this because I can just see the benefit my own children would have had from it. Um,
yeah,
yeah, when you're a parent who is the first responder, you're doing your best, but you there's things that, yeah, like as you said, and as you mentioned before, that PTSD, the trauma sometimes is in your face, and the person who
yeah,
is affected, or who is carrying that PTSD doesn't know a lot of the time when it's in your face and
no,
when it's not.
no, of course not. And yeah, and I think we had those group sessions. And then obviously we had our counselor pull kids aside and be like, hey, like on a deeper level, like, are you okay? Like
Yes.
that type of situation. But I always felt it was good when we all got together because it had that peer support. It had that, I know you, and I know that you go through the same stuff that I go through. And
Yeah.
now I can walk past you at school and I know that we have such similar experiences and we can talk about things. And if I see this person sitting by themselves, I know, oh, I'll go sit with them. I know them from Poppy Project. Blah, blah.
Yeah. That's outstanding. So yeah. So you just mentioned the name. You called it the Poppy
Yes,
Project.
project. I did not call it the Poppy Project.
What do
My
you
teacher,
call it?
oh, I thought we would just could it call it like the first responder kids because
Yeah.
we just called the defense kids. But someone had put it into an email and made the subject the Poppy Project or Poppy's Project
Yeah.
because it was just my project, my little passion project at the time, and the name just kind of stuck. It's just
It
what I've been
suits.
called,
It's a great name because
a little narcissistic.
Poppy has, well, no, the name Poppy just has so many different meanings to different people as
Oh, it
well.
does.
So
Pumpkin.
it's and despite the fact that it's you who started it and that happens to be your name, it suits anyway.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think it's lovely.
Oh, thank you. No, it's yeah, it rolls well too.
Yeah,
I
it
just
does.
yeah, it like falls off the tongue. But yeah.
So you've
Proud of
continued
it.
this for the year. Do you manage to stay in touch with any of the people that were in your group when you left? Because
Um,
obviously you started this basically in grade 12. So is it rolling on now?
I know they're trying to. They had a changeover with who was supposed to be holding them. So I know that's been tough because they're brand new to the role and they're trying to juggle defense kids with Poppy Project kids.
So are we talking about
Um,
the counselor type
yeah,
role?
the counselor.
Yeah,
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 they had a changeover in roles with that. So I know that's been difficult for them, but I think they're getting the ball rolling a bit. I know they definitely haven't given up on it. And I've been talking to other schools around the like in the district, mainly schools in which don't have to rely on government funding because I know that
yeah.
can be difficult. But privately funded schools, um, like Calvary, are always good in being able to have the people and have the resources for that.
Yeah.
Um,
What's the
yeah,
feedback been like from other schools?
some have gone radio silent on me, but with enough persuasion and calling and emailing and hey, did you get my email? Hey,
Yeah, yeah.
can you send this call? Can we?
It's really hard when you're starting a project or just keeping that momentum. I remember we first met a couple of months ago at a Team Code Blue stall,
Mm.
and yeah, and it's you could tell then that it's very overwhelming. You had
Oh, yeah.
a mention in the local newspaper, and you get a lot of sort of momentum from that. But geez, it's bloody hard to continue momentum, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. And like yeah, it's like it was on the news and it was in the papers and it was in the papers in Sydney. And I was like, oh, this is gonna take off. This is my life. I'm gonna quit my job. And then it was like, hey, did you see me in the news? And then like some people like, no,
Yeah.
what? And it's like, oh,
It's hard,
it,
isn't it? Because you're the center of your own universe. So you think
yeah.
it's
And
the
I'm
biggest
like,
story in the world.
oh, it is. It definitely, yeah. And on my mind, it was the biggest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but it was really big for like a hot minute. At least in my world, it was really big.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna get offers from left, right, and center. Everyone's gonna want the Poppy Project in their lives.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, which is so disheartening. And like, I was like moving out at this point. Well, I had just moved out and like getting my feet with that and picking more hours up at work and like having those like everything else happening. And then I was like, oh, you know, I just don't, and like not having that positive feedback or that influx of anything
Yeah.
just heartens your love for it a little bit.
Yeah.
As like realistic as that sounds, like
Momentum
not
is easy when things are positive. It's easy to keep going and all that. But it's when it drops off and you've got to really push people for something that
yeah.
seems so obvious. It
Oh
seems
yeah,
such a positive. There is no downside to doing this, but
no,
it needs somebody to drive something, and
yeah,
my saying, I'm doing a lot of advocacy work for first responders and trying to get it where we get gold cards, that type of thing, similar to DVA. And I think that's the common theme throughout all our problems is that
there's no
we should be treated the same as the Department of Defence personnel. It's
yeah,
like you said, two sides of the same coin.
yeah, it is. And like the biggest difference in defense and first responders, not only the work they do, but is defense are away at months at a time. But I felt like for me, like I had like every single day was a new thing.
Yeah,
And like seeing dad come home every single day or going out every single night, such a repetitive thing that you have to experience.
you lived the journey.
And
It's
it's not
not that
you.
he was just gone and then comes back in a couple of months and he's changed. It was
Yeah,
so subtle and so constant for you.
yeah, for sure. And like even for him, like you never know what today is going to bring you. You
Absolutely.
can for any cop, any ambo, any fiery. Like you wake up in the morning, you put that uniform on, you could have a boring day.
Yeah,
You could have the lamest day, and the best thing you do is make a cup of coffee, or someone could be stabbed.
yeah,
Like that I
We
don't know
used to
if,
say for any time we want to have a good clinical day, it means somebody else is having a really bad day.
yep, yep. And it's, yeah, you like never, never is two days the same.
Yeah.
There is never a Groundhog Day situation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's a really a good difference. So where are we at with the Poppy project now? What's the goal? We've kind of you've relaunched in the last sort of
I
little
had,
bit.
I fell off a little bit because again, I was like, oh, who cares? I don't do it anymore. I had a little tantrum about it. But I've definitely changed my perspective on it. I'm still working to get schools.
Yep.
I'm still pushing for schools to help our children, our first responder children, but I also want to turn to that. I'm going back down to New South Wales next year to help out with their partner retreat. They're doing a retreat for the partners of fire and rescue workers,
Okay.
um, which is awesome. And they want me to go down. They want me to talk to them about how do we talk to our children and what's the best way to go about things and how do we cope with this and how do we make sure our kids are coping well with these things that are happening around them and whatnot. But I think seeing that and then reflecting on, but what about, but we don't do that up here.
Yeah.
There's nothing up here, but you guys are doing that. And I think there's a big part of me that's like, get me and the QPS commissioner in the same room together and,
Yep.
you know, like,
Have you reached out to the commissioner? Have you reached out
oh
to
yeah,
the politicians?
I reached out to all three of them. Um, QPS, QFES, and QAS.
Yep.
The only response I got was from the fireys. One of the commissioner's representatives just said, "Sorry, we don't have any money." And I was like, okay,
Yep.
well, yeah, but
Because most schools have their own counsellors now, don't they?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Every
it's really a matter of integrating with the council. Like it's not.
yeah.
I can't imagine it's a high funds intensive program.
Oh no, it's definitely not. And I think the biggest thing is if you only have your counselor there 2 days a week, it's just having them a third day a week,
Yep.
just so they can check in on people. And even if I said, like I say this when I go to every school, I said no two schools run the same way.
100%.
Like if it works better for you to have it opt in and just have your first responder children know, hey, this is the person you go to, then that's how we'll do it. And if
Yep.
you want to do more group sessions because you feel your kids will benefit from peer support, then we'll do more of that. If you
Yep.
want to single out your children and pull them out and sit them down for half an hour and say, hey, let's talk about things or blah, 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 then that's where we'll do it.
Yep.
So I'm very flexible with understanding what's best for the school and what's easiest for the school. Um, but I don't have a whole lot of credibility behind me so
Yep.
far. I am an 18-year-old fresh out of high school, not studying a psychology degree or a counseling degree.
But
So
you've got an idea that is
I have an idea,
absolute
and I
gold.
have a lot of thoughts, and I have experience in things.
What are
So
you
I just
looking for help wise? What if anyone's listening to this and they're like, God, I
have
love this idea. What could they
$1 million.
do? Who could they approach? What do you need from other people to help you grow this?
I think my biggest thing is funding. Um, I've got one of the Rotary clubs in Townsville. They're helping me out with supplying pizzas for like an initial group get together for one of our schools. We can all sit down and, introduce everyone, say, hey, this is the Poppy Project, and you know,
So
this is how.
simple sponsorship, simple a small donation.
Oh yeah, for sure. If someone has a spare psychologist who has a has a has QPS, QAS, QFES, first responder knowledge
Yeah,
or
ties.
knowledge, ties,
Yeah.
specialities, and they want to give up their time to talk to me, I would love that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think it's just about finding the right people and getting, because I can talk about my dad and I can talk about the people that I've spoken to, and um, I can talk about everyone that I've spoken to and all of the experiences I've had, but I don't have that clinical knowledge to be able to say this is exactly why you should do it. Here are the numbers. Here is,
Yeah.
I don't have that.
What you've found is the advantage of having a support group there for you,
Yeah,
and now you want to offer it to other people.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah, so I want to make changes, like, because I don't necessarily feel like it should be. The idea of having it in schools is a great idea, not only for financial reasons and blah blah blah, but it's also a great, like, it's also not your child's schools. I don't know what's the word that I'm thinking. It's not your child's schools.
It's not their area of responsibility.
Yeah, it's not their responsibility. They
Yeah.
don't have to do that.
No, no.
And it's not, and I don't think it's a parent, like, I think it is and it isn't a parent's responsibility. But I think if the government or the place that you work at, the entity that you work for, is providing you with this trauma or like the work that you do, and they know that. Like, I don't think the commissioner is sitting up in his office thinking every police officer had a great day today. Every Amber had the best day ever today. I don't think anything bad happened. Um, like, they need to be the ones supplying this help, supplying viable resources. QPS has a part-time psychologist in Townsville.
Yeah.
Part-time. Mackay has no psychologist.
Yeah.
Like, there is nothing. Like, there is minimal resources in this
Yeah.
town.
Have you spoken to politicians?
Yeah. My dad stalked David Christopherly on a flight, and I managed to get his phone number from someone in the community. And I sent him a text and I said, "Hi, Mr. David Christopherly. I see you're in Townsville. Guess where I am? I'm in Townsville.
Yeah.
What are you doing?" And I had Adam Bailey, who's also, I think it's LMP, is also a part of LMP. And he called me and he was like, "You can meet him. I guess you can come." So I've sat down with a lot of people. I sat down with the Shadow Minister for ambulance. Um, just again, it's more advice. It's more talking about, how do we push change in these sectors?
Yep.
We create change. So yeah, I've been talking to a lot of politicians. It's just them being able to push that and help me get to that space.
Yeah. And it's very hard to get past lip service and agreement into actual
Policy
physical movement
and
and policy and legislation.
yeah, it is. But yeah, I want to strive for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'll have a lot of support. So, how do people find out more about the Poppy Project?
I have a website, www.thepoppyproject.com.au. I have an Instagram, Poppylillac Project, which recently has a bunch of new posts to go check out. And I also have a Facebook, which is just the Poppy Project. Yeah, and
Yeah.
my email and my phone number is all attached to that. And if you want to give me a call or you want to send me an email and you want to have a chat to me, I would love that. So I
Yeah.
love talking.
So, this podcast is aimed at first responders, their families, the support people around those careers. So if you've had children, you're going to have children, somebody with children that can benefit from this, then it's in their interests for us to get this off the ground. So please support Poppy. This is it's a bloody amazing thing, and it's really something that is missing. And can make a huge difference in. I mean, I don't know what the stats are as far as children growing up as first responders with issues, but we know the prevalence of PTSD and mental health issues within the actual first responder community. So the children are paying a price for our service. As much as we don't want them to, and they don't deserve that. So if we can do something that makes their lives better, Let's do that. So let's, please send this to politicians. Send, all of Poppy's details to whoever the hell you know.
Yeah. Someone has Anthony Albanese's number. Look it
Yep.
through.
Yep. And this is a federal issue, and you're not, Poppy,
National.
you're interested in going national. You're not interested,
Oh, yeah.
you'll go
I'm
wherever.
not staying in Townsville. This
Yep.
isn't a Townsville issue. This is an Australian issue.
Absolutely. And the problem we've got at the moment is that because first responders are generally employed by the states, it's often fobbed between federal and state politicians with the bucket of money and stuff like that. This is a federal issue, guys. There's over 100,000 first responders, and that's not included SES and rural fireys, and there's what, another 300,000 or more of those. So this is a national issue. It affects probably more families than it doesn't, to be perfectly honest. So I really encourage you to spread Poppy's message. Talk to families. Talk if you know a copper, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Get them to listen to this. Get them to listen to this podcast. Get them to jump on her Facebook page and stuff and engage. And the more engagement, the way I figure it with any of this sort of stuff, you've got to plant a million seeds, and if a couple germinate, then you're doing bloody well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, So again, it was thepoppyproject.com.au is her website, and then the Poppy Project on Facebook. If you've got any dramas, then you can also contact me and I will put you in contact. Poppy, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
I really appreciate it.
I can't wait to work with you in the future. Our paths will cross many times. We're both on the same, we're both advocating for the same type of thing, just through a different avenue. And, we're certainly, Teen Code Blue is supports 100% what you're doing, as you do with us. So we're looking forward to doing lots with you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter.
Okay, take care. Thank you for everything. Thank you to your parents for everything. And we wish you all the best.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.